The Bostonian versus the Book.
That was Aaron Rodgers' thing. It's your quarterback in the first round.
Yeah.
It's a luxury pick. We don't have the luxury. We're trying to win right now. I'm in a window right now, and you're going to say, no, we're going to plan this for the future. With a guy who had 4 years, 4 seasons ended by injury. 4. Like, Michael Penix is a walking injury. Like, what are you doing taking him in the top 10?
The Bostonian versus the Book.
And now you have to qualify in these majors. You got to go do it, man. Like, and it just comes off really petty to sit up there and be like, I'm not.
You know what you signed up for. So I don't like the pettiness. And I 100% think Taylor Gooch should be in the major championships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same note, I'm saying this, but also it's like, hey, this is the world in which we live in right now, and you don't deserve anything.
Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome in. Game Time Decisions. We're live. We're in the mix. It is a Saturday morning on Game Time Decisions. I'm Kevin Walsh with you. Plenty to get to here on this Saturday. We're live at the Charles Schwab, where Scotty Scheffler is roughly a billion shots off the lead and the favorite. We'll talk to Brady Cannon in a bit and get his thoughts on that tournament. Full baseball card. NHL playoffs, once again, we go Western Conference as we saw the Rangers yesterday in OT level that series with the Florida Panthers. The Stars will look to do the same after they lost in overtime in the opening game. Full WNBA board. The Indiana Fever are on the second leg of a back-to-back. They're coming off of their first win of the season. Let's go quick pick here. I like the over in Aces Fever. I like it quite a bit. This number's climbing. 172.5, so becoming 173.5 in spot. I play this at 173 flat. And a lot of this has to do with Vegas specifically. Coming off of a loss last season, they averaged nearly 100 a night. If we're going to get that 100 out of Vegas, which they're capable of, especially against this Fever group, we should be smooth sailing. But fading the Fever right now is not working for people, despite what they would probably want you to believe based on the record. This is a Fever group that has covered 4 in a row, red hot against the number. And I think this team, if it's a blowout, whatever it might be, they'll be able to hang inside that 16-point spread. But I specifically think that means we get points here. Let's go over the 173. We have a full WNBA card for the people tonight. And then we have the NBA playoffs. Western Conference Finals 2-0 Dallas lead, where Luka Doncic has been unbelievable. Hits the game winner, 32, 10, and 13. That's another triple-double on the board. And he's flirting with the best player in the world crown. Probably going to take it for a lot of people over Nikola Jokic, since he's doing this to a team that eliminated Nikola Jokic, despite the fact that Nikola Jokic was great. Look, that's just how these things sometimes go. But we'll get to the Western Conference Finals in a minute, because when we're talking about the best players on the best teams, usually these things are pretty easy to figure out. Luka is the best player on the Dallas Mavericks. And Dallas is minus 600 to win the Western Conference Finals now with their 2-0 lead. Luke is minus 390 to win Conference Finals MVP. Little odds to probability for the people. Bear with me, but it's just simple stuff here. Dallas at minus 600 is an implied probability of 85.7%. Luke at minus 390 to win Western Conference Finals MVP is an implied probability of 79.6. So a minimal gap there. You have the Celtics at minus 10,000 to win the Eastern Conference Finals. The literal implied probability is 99.9%. The series is done. For many people, the series was done before it started. That a result of the Celtics being the best team by a lot in the Eastern Conference, despite not having Kristaps. And that the result of the Pacers being a 6th seed, who entering the playoffs had the longest odds of any opponent Boston has seen so far to win this conference. So 99.9% Boston wins this series, and their best player is a plus price to win Conference Finals MVP. That is Jason Tatum at plus 115. So what do we do now with the Eastern Conference Finals MVP market? If you were here on the Tuesday, if I believe this is when that series began, did it be? Yes, right? Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, bingo. If you were here, I mentioned, hey, it would be great if in the first game we saw Jaylen Brown be the star of the show and we could turn it back around and bet Tatum at a good number. Maybe even the Pacers steal a game. We could turn it back around and bet Tatum at a good number. And here we are, 2-0, and we can bet Tatum at a plus number. Yet I have a world of hesitation. Because don't forget that these are being voted on. These are narratives. And no matter what you would do, what I would do, we have to figure out what they will do. And I tried to look up who is voting on Eastern Conference Finals MVP this year. I could not find that. You know, you take that, bring it into the tweets. Who's giving Jaylen Brown all the credit? Who's giving Jason Tatum credit? Here's where we are through 2 games. Game number 1, Jaylen Brown hit the shot. And the shot, I think, is weighing heavier than Tatum being by far the best player in overtime. Partly because Tatum was bad in the fourth quarter of game 1, which is true. Then you go to game 2, Jaylen Brown was awesome, scored 40, and Tatum was pretty bad. I mean, he was, let's put it like this. Here are your plus minuses for the Celtics starting lineup in that game. Plus 18, plus 11, plus 11, plus 13, 0. That's Tatum. Finished with 23, useless. He had 4 at the break, and a fraudulent 23 points. It's what it is. You know it, I know it, Celtics fans know it, he knows it. Voters know it. And this is now kind of the feeling for me. It feels like the tide is turning against Tatum. I've talked about it a bit here. I promise you I talk about it a lot off air. I find Jason Tatum particularly fascinating. Tatum has made it to high-level playoff games from the word go and has been in these conference finals repeatedly. Yet we can always tell that Jason Tatum is not the best player in the world. He is not on the same tier of whomever you believe the best player in the world is. When it was LeBron, Giannis, Jokic, Tatum was not on that tier. So with the Celtics being on their march, and that meaning that Tatum was favored to win Finals MVP, I thought that was pretty interesting. Because for a lot of people, the Finals MVP will just be then correlate to best player in the world. That's how Kawhi hilariously was given the crown by some. That's how LeBron earned it. People toss the Steph stuff around. Giannis. Finals MVP matters a lot. A lot. It's the toughest thing probably to win in this league. So Jason Tatum, who's been flirting with the top for a long time, is supposed to win a Finals MVP. but nobody thinks he's the best player in the world. I don't know how many people think he's one of the 5 best players in the world. Now the debate is starting, is he even the best player on his team? Now, spoiler, he is the best player on the Boston Celtics. But I think people are a little tired of Tatum. And I don't think voters would be upset to not give this award to Jason Tatum. Don't forget the year Jimmy Butler won Conference Finals MVP. Almost half those votes went to Caleb Martin. You can hand this Conference Finals MVP over to Jaylen Brown. But instead of betting Jaylen Brown at minus 125, because I'm not concerned with that, or buying low on Tatum at plus 115, I think as long as when we get to the NBA Finals, and that remains to be seen, as long as I believe the Celtics are going to win the title, which I do as we sit here today, the bet will then be on Tatum to win Finals MVP. He will not be shut out of both. Boston would have to lose the title or lose this round, which isn't happening. Because now, Jason Tatum playing better than Jaylen Brown, which is the expectation, right? But when he does that in the finals, it will mean more. He'll be given more credit, and he will then be rewarded with Finals MVP. Something to keep in mind. We'll talk about this game a little bit more. Some Mavs Timberwolves and your WNBA card next. Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back right here, Game Time Decisions, picking up the pieces on Celtics Pacers. Again, I thought it was appropriate to set the stage because we have a Conference Finals MVP award where the consensus really should be unanimous, but team's best player is not the favorite. And again, I really think that will ultimately help Tatum take down the Finals MVP, which matters a lot more to him and where he hopes to land in the all-time pantheon of this sport. But it feels like it's going to be Jaylen Brown. Here's the bigger question, though. Is this series over? Are we done here? Is this the sweep? Boston hasn't lost on the road yet in these playoffs. Now, it doesn't hold as much weight because of the competition. That's the reality of it, right? Yes, Boston has to play who's in front of them, but we have to evaluate it based on that. They played Miami without Jimmy, and they played the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell for the final 2 games, and one of those games in Cleveland. Well, guess what? Now it looks like they might play the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton, which is tough, which is really tough, because Tyrese is the engine of this team. Tyrese Halliburton is why we are breaking down Indiana Pacers basketball here in late May. And what does this look like without Hallie? Pascal's going to be capable of some big games. Miles Turner, if you want to play the 16.5, it's tempting. Just because there were only 3 games that Pascal played and Miles Turner played without Halliburton in the regular season. Turner did have 20-plus in 2 out of the 3, so I thought that was an interesting look. If you want to play the 16.5, you figure it goes up a tick if Halliburton's out, because you have to relocate those points props. But it also, if Halliburton plays, it's not like he can't get Miles through that number, which he got through in the first game of this series. So I thought that was an interesting look. The problem with this right now, and look, I'd love to come on here, fling you guys 4 or 5 picks for this game. Let's rock it. Let's rip it. The most important player in this series might not play. Tatum is better than Halliburton, I believe, at the moment. We'll talk. I believe, right? But the reality is, if I told you Jason Tatum was done in this series, Halliburton's fully healthy, the Celtics are still favorites. That's just the reality of it. They are. Halliburton is a swing so big that this feels done. Minus 140, Boston to sweep. It's tempting. But even that, I need to know whether or not Halliburton is playing, which I also need to know for a Halliburton 8.2 assists per game prop series average. If you've bet that along with me, we are in a weird spot. You have to play 3 games for action. He's at the moment averaging 9 assists. He had a game with 10, he had a game with 8. If Halliburton was fully healthy, that was a winning bet. I have all the confidence in the world. But even if Halliburton now plays again, which would get us our 3rd game, maybe even 4th game, do we have a minutes limit? Because that's where things get messed up. If all of a sudden Halliburton can only give us 20 minutes, 5 assists, we'll get burned. So even from that angle, I don't know if I'm cheering for Tyrese to come back. I might just be cheering for the void, which is a nasty, nasty feeling. One item to keep eyes on, and again, I'm telling you, I'd love to come in and tell you I have a bunch of stuff. There's a few things I've looked at. Drew Holiday, under 14.5 points before this series, was under in 8 out of 10 this playoffs. He's hit it in 2 straight because he's shooting 70% from the field. I know it's the Pacers defense. That's outrageous. That drops off even a little bit. Drew probably a little bit less aggressive with Tyrese out of the game. And I think you could see him under the 14.5. And keep eyes on Sam Hauser, 5.5 points. Hauser's coming off a 20-minute performance, which is really all that matters. I know he only scored 5, but if we're going to get 20 minutes out of Sam Hauser, I mean, he's going to go over 5.5 points if he gets another chance at it. Now, those minutes were born out of Jaylen Brown foul trouble early on in this basketball game. But if we don't get Halliburton, we get a blowout. Hauser becomes interesting. All stuff to keep your eye on. I guess one other item would be Pascal, over 3.5 assists, was 5-0 in the 5 games he played without Tyrese. But TJ McConnell wasn't really playing in all those games, so I would be cautious. I would be very, very cautious on those numbers. Just quickly, because we'll go through the rest of the card, but I want to hit a little bit more on Minnesota and Dallas, and certainly we're going to hit this with Coach James Young a little bit later on in our show here. But, I mean, how about this Mavericks team? Look, there's a few things that have kind of been confirmed. Luka Doncic, best player in the series, gap. That's not a slight to Ant. It's people understanding where Luka is. Some are going to say he's the best player in the world. I think he's no worse than 3rd. I'd probably personally slot him 2 at the moment. Now, if he finishes the deal here, he's going to end up considered consensus best player in the sport. And I don't mean finish Minnesota. I mean finish off with an NBA championship. Now, the second best player in this series so far hasn't been Anthony Edwards, and that's a disaster. But is it that surprising? I sent out the question to people. It was happening at the back end of the Denver series. The performances weren't the same. The efficiency was gone. And here we are again. Anthony Edwards now, 5 games of about 20 a night and 35% from the field. In this series, he's made 4 2-point shots. 4. It's bad. It's bad. Ant can't get to the cup. It's very bad right now for Minnesota. This team lost game number 1 with Jaden McDaniels making 6 threes and game number 2 with Naz Reid making 7. So you can say, hey, Ant's about to play better. He's got a 30 ball somewhere left in him. Hey, Cat's going to play better. He should have a 25 piece somewhere within him. But Jaden McDaniels followed up his 24-point night with 2. You think Naz Reid's going to average 7 made threes a night? I don't. Early read, Minnesota does win the 3rd game, hot offensive night. But that doesn't matter. Dallas hasn't lost back-to-back games yet this postseason. Minnesota now needs to beat them 4 out of 5. Tall task. We'll rip through the rest of the card next.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer, too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Back right here on SportsGrid. NHL playoffs, Dallas, Edmonton tonight. We're going to talk to Joe Madden in just a little bit. Get her picks. Dave Sharapan will stop by. We played an over at .6 in that opening game. 2-2 overtime, 3-2 win. Connor McDavid with your OT goal. 5.5s were -140 in game 1, down to -128. I'm tempted by over. Want to see what everybody else is thinking. Stars up to a -144. Clear cut. They won't lose again. Line interested. That was the line on Minnesota against the Mavericks in game 2. Got it to 6.5. Whoa, they won't lose again. Whoops. They weren't even going to cover that game had they won. It's just how sometimes these things spin. We're going to talk to Brady Cannon in about 5 minutes here. Charles Schwab, Davis Riley, plus 500. Scotty Scheffler, plus 550. 7-shot gap between those golfers. I mean, how do you not love that? How do you not love that? We're going to talk about it again with Brady Cannon in a moment. Major League Baseball board, again, if you heard me talk about it, you know I kind of like to wait for my lineups. But I've highlighted a few spots that I'm going to be looking at here on this card. Royals are interesting. We're getting a dog price on a hot team. Sometimes I know that feels trap. But Brady Singer, greater than sign, Aaron Savali, doesn't feel wrong. And here's the deal. If you bet it against the Royals aren't going to win a fifth straight, a sixth straight, a seventh straight. You've been getting beat up a little bit here. Now, Tampa losing 5 in a row, I think, is a little bit of a part of this line. But I'm interested in Kansas City, interested in the Cubs. Little even money shot here against Michaelis, who's been absolutely atrocious. That's not a bad look there. Interested in the Reds at a dog price. They've got the better pitcher on the mound than they're at home. Hunter Green going here against Walker Buehler. We do have that season-long Hunter Green under wins, which is fine. He only has 2 right now, but might not be a bad spot to grab some Hunter Green, some Cincinnati Reds at a plus price. And then late night, I'm taking a look at the Padres here. Yanks, what a spot yesterday for that team. Minus 120 in San Diego with Darvish on the mound. That was a strong number. I know it didn't probably look like it, right? Minus 120, but that means that if the Yankees were to flip that game back to the Bronx, we're talking what, minus 165? Against Darvish, who had not given up a run in 4 starts in a row? It was a strong number. Look was Yankees. Didn't play it, but just kind of, now we flip it back here today. And earlier in the day, you had, underneath minus 120s on Dylan Cease at home. I think you're seeing the Yankees priced as probably the second or third best team in the sport. Dodgers probably still booked as top dogs. But, man, the Yankees' prices are strong. I wonder how much of that is home road stuff here. 10-17 record for San Diego in San Diego. They got to start to turn that around. Let's run through your WNBA card here. 5 games tonight. And I got in the mix across the board. Quick pick style, we mentioned Fever Aces. We're going to play over the 173 there with the Vegas Aces coming off of a loss. They could absolutely touch 100. And nobody is separating on the Indiana Fever these days as they're coming off their first win of their season last night, which, by the way, one of the key items from that result, and it's something that we discussed with the Fever when they were sitting there at 0-5, but Aaliyah Boston. And Aaliyah Boston finally stepped up for this team, gave him 17 points, 6 boards, a +4 in her action. Kelsey Mitchell was +12. Caitlin Clark flirted with the triple-double, 11, 10, and 8 in that basketball game. This Fever team's going to get better. They are. And again, they've covered 4 in a row. Think about that. The Caitlin Clark team, where you would think that if people were betting W, they're just betting Fever, 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 cleaning up right now. W card starts in Minnesota. Lynx Liberty. You guys know I like this Lynx team here. Little tempted to grab them plus the points, but it's bounce back style for New York. Coming off of a loss. Last season, Breanna Stewart averaged over 25 a night off of a loss. That's what we have here. I'm going to play her over 21.5 points. And the other prop I'll play, Skylar Diggins-Smith over 5.5 assists. She was dreadful last game. 1 of 10 shooting, just 2 points. Points props 15.5. I can't get there to that number. I just can't, but I can get on a 5.5 assist prop, which she still did hit, landed 5 last game despite sitting for the final 6 or so minutes in that game. Gonna grab the Wings late night plus the 3 against Phoenix. A little sell high on a Mercury hot start. And then a Connecticut Sun team total under 82.5 as the Chicago Sky will make their home debut and potentially see if they can hand Connecticut their first loss of the season. Up next, it's the Charles Schwab. It's Colonial. And it's Scotty Scheffler, 7 shots off the lead with the second best price. That's next right here on Sports.
using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We're back with you right here. We're live on SportsGrid. Brady Cannon joins us. And Brady, truly, my appreciation for these tournaments continues to grow because they're all so unique. And this Charles Schwab, I tell you, Scotty Scheffler is 7 shots off the lead and is plus 550 right behind Davis Riley, who he's 7 shots back of at plus 500 in this outright board. It's absolutely remarkable here.
It is. And I don't like that price on Scotty. You and I were just talking before we came on. I really don't expect him to win here. The other day we talked about him to finish top 20 and the price was minus 150. That looks like a fantastic bet if you got down on that right now. I'm going to go one further, and I think top 10 is now a good bet in the neighborhood of minus 250. I still think that's, inexpensive. Now, the question becomes if you want to, expand upon that and go top 5. I think you could kind of sprinkle either way on the no or the yes on top 5. But top 10, I'm on board. On Thursday or after Thursday's round, we were on board with the top 20. I'll go ahead and jump on a top 10. But I don't know if he's going to win this, Kevin. I expect that he won't. And at 5-1 or even plus 450, I'm certainly not going to bet that way.
Yeah, I just, and we're used to it, right? The value not being there on Scotty. I think this is particularly jarring to see. Even if you always 5 shots back of everyone else, there's still some, Sungjae Im, Sepp Straka. These are guys that we discuss. So who
Those are
are
big
you
time players right
looking
there.
at Brady?
You nailed it. Davis Riley's a good player, and he's won on the PGA Tour before. I just found out yesterday, I don't think we really knew, but apparently he had been dealing with some injury earlier this season. He's played in 14 events. He's teed it up, but apparently he's had some nagging stuff lingering, what have you. He's missed 7 cuts in 14 starts so far this season. I'm not too worried about him. Plus, he's doing everything perfectly. Greens in regulation, number 1, scrambling, number 2, approach play, number 3, and putting, number 5. It's almost going too well for Davis Riley, who is, he's certainly a B-tier player, if not a C-tier player. I'm not too worried about him. Buckley and Cootie are maybe not even C-tier players. I'm not worried about them, but you talked about it. Sunjae Im, Sepp Straka, Keegan Bradley. I think Morikawa is still a factor. I think Brian Harman is still a factor. Straka, number 1 in this field on approach, 12th in driving accuracy, 16th in strokes gained off the tee, putting 56th. Now, Sepp Straka is not typically a good putter, but he's got to get better than that, and I think he will. So I don't think he's a bad play at around 9-1 to possibly win the whole thing. He's already been a multi-time winner on the PGA Tour. Harman at 14-1. He's basically doing everything really well. This guy is a good putter, and he's currently ranked 36th in the field for putting. So I think Harma and Straka are live. Im at 6 under and 10-1. He's doing everything really well. No real outliers there for Sunjae. He won recently on the other side of the world, and he's kind of had time to get over that little jet lag period that he experienced. He looks to be back in form. And I still think Morikawa's an outside shot.
Yeah.
He's doing everything kind of average. The putter is still cold. And it's a little odd because the putter had been so hot for Morikawa all the way up until Sunday at the PGA, and it hasn't turned around yet. It might in the next couple days.
I think Morikawa is kind of the one that jumped out to me, and perhaps this is a fool's errand here, but he and Scotty right now both sit 3 under. Scotty plus 550, Colin 20-1. I don't know if that's the gap. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if that feels a little too big of a gap. Now, maybe Colin's number at 20 is the fine, and it just kind of goes to what we've said, that the Scheffler prices are out of this world. But if Morikawa can have a great round, right, on Saturday or Sunday, I think even then finishing positions, and this is kind of what you've always mentioned, Brady, right? There are other ways to play these tournaments. For example, Morikawa right now plus 115 for a top 10. That's a
nice
little bit
price.
Interesting.
Very nice price.
I was messing around with these a little bit at our PGA Championship, but 2 guys you trust and you bring them together for top 20s. I don't know the number, but what would a Colin Sepp, something like that potentially for top 20 together, Brady? Those are kind of some things that I would be looking at. What are you looking at right now outside of the outright market?
Well, you mentioned that Morikawa for a top 10 at plus 115. I like that bet a lot too. We've got Scotty at minus 250, Colin at plus 115. I think those guys are both good shots to finish top 10. Again, I have my pre-tournament outrights. I've got Denny McCarthy, who came back to the pack or rose up the leaderboard yesterday with a 66. I'm hoping more good play for him continues. I've got Morikawa pre-tournament. I've got Billy Horschel. Probably not going to get there for an outright, but I'm trying to root him home for a top 20. I don't know if I'm going to add anything at this point, Kevin. I kind of get deep in the weeds. On Saturday night, I have been assigned to write the tournament for the article for the PGA Tour about on Sunday, who are we going to back and who are we going to fade? And I'm probably going to do a lot of research at that point, and maybe I will push a few buttons and make a couple bets. Right now, I'm kind of content where I am. But what we've talked about, and maybe the problem is, I don't have a lot of access to finishing position markets here in Nevada. Those are basically relegated to FanDuel and DraftKings. So while I think Morikawa and Scheffler to finish top 10 are really good bets, I'm not so sure I can find that bet here in Nevada. So that's one thing that has me stuck. But right now I'm feeling pretty good about the pre-tournament bets I have. We'll have to see where it goes. As I get into this article after round 3 concludes, maybe I'll get involved further.
Well, what I think, Brady, will hopefully help, and what I'm right now, I feel like I have no read on, is where does a golfer need to be to feel like they can still win this tournament? Because realistically, right, I just, give or take, we would say, 5 back on Saturday? You would I guess, probably say the range is, again, basically the favorite, right? If we can, Scotty is 7 back, and I know that that's a one-of-one golfer, but then, Davis Riley, Hayden Buckley, Pearson Cootie, look, respectfully, nobody knows who the heck those guys are, right? It doesn't mean that they can't win, Brady. But so if -6, right, where Bradley, Straka, okay, those are names we all know.
Right.
Well, 5 shots back of that is -1. Well, now all of a sudden I've got 50 golfers that can win this tournament on Saturday, and that's too many.
I agree. Yeah, I think the realistic number is -3. Could a -2 get there with a crazy round? I mean, that's the thing. If you're at -2 and you go out and shoot 62, okay, you're in the hunt. But what's going to happen on Sunday?
Yeah.
You're probably going to, you're going to shoot over par. That's going to come back. So I think 3 is a pretty realistic number. I do believe your analysis there is spot on that, you kind of throw out the -10, you throw out the -8s. Let's kind of call -7 maybe the lead right now. 4 shots back of that is -3. 7 or 8, 7.5, I would say, is about the lead. I would expect Riley to come back to the pack. Not sure what Buckley and Cootie are going to do, but I'm not too worried about him. So, yeah, I think 3 under is probably as far as you want to go for an outright winner at this point.
And just to, kind of add on, those top 3 guys, they currently all rank top 5 over the course of this tournament in putting.
Yeah.
So when you try and figure out, hey, how are these guys here? That's probably the answer. And, again, I'm just kind of saying things that Brady's told me throughout, these months we've been doing this. But a putter can stay hot for 4 rounds. But that's what you're betting on if you're betting on these guys. Brady, great stuff as always. We'll talk tomorrow. Joe Madden up next.
Using the parlays against one another, right? And being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live with you on SportsGrid, taking it all in. A lot of action on this Saturday, no doubt. We have to make our way. There's a big soccer game on right now. French Open's happening. A lot happening here, but we've got playoffs, NBA and NHL. Let's get to the NHL. Joe Madden here to help us break it down. Joe, let's start yesterday, if we can, in the Garden. Rangers win it in overtime. And I don't know, it's probably not an overreaction to say that they saved their season.
But it really is, right? You look at that game there, and I really do think they saved their season with that win yesterday, because I do think if they went down 0-2 versus the Florida Panthers, this is the situation that this team hasn't been in so far in the playoffs. So I do think we would have seen those struggles out of them in game 3, returning back to Florida. But I love what we saw out of them last night. I was riding with them. That overtime was stressful, but Kevin, in that series, I have 2+ overtimes. That was coming in at plus 165, and I took 3+ overtimes at plus 750. I do expect us to see more overtimes out there. Igor Shesterkin played a phenomenal game. So it was a great game, and exactly how we needed it to play out. Well, Rangers fans did, because we need this series to go deep, Kevin.
Yeah, and I think it looks like it has legs to it. The question now is, what about this series between Dallas and Edmonton? And the Oilers winning that game, I think, in the way that they did, probably surprised a lot of people. Defense was great. Win a close one in overtime. And what do you know? Connor McDavid steps up. I want to know, what did you take away from that first game?
Takeaways from that first game. It was phenomenal to see Edmonton be able to kill in overtime a 4-minute penalty out there. Connor McDavid got that high sticking call, and a lot of people think it wasn't right. I do think it was the right call. I had to talk my mom off a shelf even. She was so mad at the refs. But Connor McDavid did make that play, and it caused him that penalty. But Edmonton being able to kill that off was phenomenal out there for them. Now, you look at Jake Ottinger in game 1 of a series, and I do expect Dallas to get through to the next round, to the Stanley Cup Finals. When we look at him in that game 1, it takes him a couple of minutes. And I did expect Edmonton to be able to come out nice and strong and hit his net. I didn't expect that one to go to double overtime, though. That was a phenomenal nail-biting game. And Kevin, I think when the puck drops tonight, we're going to have another nail-biter.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one here. I'm curious what you think about this total, though, Joe. We have a 5.5 here, minus 128 juice right now between the Stars and the Oilers. What are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, looking at the total, Kevin, I really do think you wait into that first period, and you would, if you're looking for an over, because I do think we get that lockdown in the first period. Right away, though, for the full game, I would take it to the under. I really do expect both of these teams to play in a lower scoring matchup here with a 4 or 5 goals. So 5.5, it's got to be to that under. We know it's dangerous. So when you look at the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers taking an under in their matchups, but I still think we get a 4 or we get a 5, not a 6-goal game. Worst case scenario, it's 2-2 going to overtime again. So I'm looking for the Dallas Stars really to come out strong in this matchup here, with Jake Ottinger having a phenomenal game. Now, Jake Ottinger has a save shots on goal prop of 25.5. You can take that to the over at minus 125. When we look at Edmonton in game 1, that first period, they got off to such a slow start with their shots on goal, but they found a way to get those shots in the second and the third period. So in that first period, they only were able to record 3 shots on goal. I expect more out of them in that first period. So Jake Ottinger over the 25.5. I think it's a safe way to go at minus 125, but I'm also going to fire that up. Kevin, you can take him for 30+ save shots on goal. That's coming in at plus 220. I'm expecting Edmonton to hit him with at least 34 shots in this one. We know the Dallas Stars have allowed other opponents to get those shots on Jake Ottinger, and the faith in Jake Ottinger for the Dallas Stars, especially looking at game 2, 3, and 4, we're going to see them allow a couple more shots than we did see in game 1. They know game 1 is the hardest for Jake Ottinger out there on the ice versus a new opponent, and while he gets that rhythm out there. So I do think Dallas gets a win. I think Jake Ottinger has a big day. I still think we get 4 goals in this one, though. 3-1 style win here, either for Dallas, or this is a 2-2 going to overtime and we get those 5. So I'd take it to the under, Kevin.
Now, Joe, I'm curious if you've looked at any of the other specials that are available for this series, because we left the opening game, despite the under, Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid as the goal scorers, which couldn't have been more perfect. So you look over here for people who bet on FanDuel, and all these specials now are still alive because all of them got in the mix. You know, you want to get crazy, McDavid to score in every game 30-1. That feels a bit nuts, but I'm curious, especially since you think it's an under tonight, are any of these bigger numbers still tempting to you, or would you be cautious despite the big plus prices?
I would be so cautious out here, especially when you look at that Connor McDavid prop. The books want you to take Connor McDavid with him getting that overtime goal and being so impactful in game one there. The books are just enticing you to take Connor McDavid. And now we know he's a superstar. But if you're looking at Edmonton, I really would look at Leon Draisaitl. He's been able to get in the mix so much. But I don't like these specials, Kevin. You're getting great plus money on them for a reason. Their ability to hit is just so low. I would look more at the overtime games. We've already seen one overtime game. You can still jump in on 3+ overtime games at plus 250 between these two teams. These two teams are going to battle it out, and it's going to be a crazy one here because Stuart Skinner is standing on his head. I think in that last game, probably the best game that he had out there. And now both of these teams have been playing phenomenal on that kill as well, really giving the support to their goaltenders in this. Neither team was able to score on that power play, but I do expect in this game here, one of these teams to be able to convert on that power play. We know how strong Edmonton has been. I think there could be an error here by the Dallas Stars, and that's how Edmonton finds their goals. So if you're looking at someone for the Edmonton Oilers to score tonight, I would circle Leon Draisaitl to be able to come out and score on that power play.
I do think the bet that I am interested in when we talk about the specials, though, and I can't remember. Forgive me, Joe. Don't be mad at me, but I don't remember if you mentioned this before the series. 4+ goals scored in every game of the series is plus 144. Over 3.5 is minus 720 tonight. That's an interesting bet. We'll hit the baseball next right here on SportsGrid.
Using the parlays against one another, right, and being able to get a little bit of juice consig, I found to be a little interesting.
Believe me, all the rhombuses and parallelograms are constantly trying to search and find out those things every day. It's one of the battles that you know, as you expand the menu, you encounter new battles.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
How fragile are these guys? It's amazing. They're supposed to be the greatest athletes in the world, and yet they can't walk and chew gum at the same time without getting hurt, for goodness sakes.
That Trout injury really is a bummer too, because people thought he was going to have a big year. And I look, I don't feel bad for the Angels. I don't like Mike Trout in Anaheim. I thought he should have left when his contract was up.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early
The
line.
magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, back to right here. Let's go through this baseball board, Joe. Plenty of action. And by the way, I did confirm I completely stole that pick from Joe. That was her who told me about the 4+ goals in every game of the series. So excellent stuff. Joe, the series, the day the baseball begins, Detroit and Toronto. Alek Manoah brought back to reality last game. What do you think here with Reese Olson and Barrios?
You look at Reese Olson here. He's been phenomenal, especially at home. He's got an ERA below 1 at home. Overall ERA on the season at 2.16. Taking on the Toronto Blue Jays lineups that still has had these hiccups out there. I don't trust this team really offensively, especially against Reese Olson of the Detroit Tigers. Barrios coming out here for Toronto. He should be able to limit the Tigers' bats as well. I'm going to look at the first 5 innings, Kevin, in this one and take it to the under 4.5 runs. It's kind of juicy at minus 130, but I do think both of these pitchers come out nice and strong and really do limit the bats on either side. I think you could almost even ult that down. I'm not expecting a lot of runs in the first 5 innings. And then I'd look at the Nerfy in this as well. The Nerfy's coming in at minus 120. I think we got a great pitching matchup here.
All right, so pitchers will shine here. What about White Sox Orioles, as Chicago at a plus price at home could be a little tempting?
Yeah, it is so tempting here for the Chicago White Sox. You could grab them at plus 1.5 at minus 110 or straight up on that money line at plus 148. Eric Friede coming out here for the Chicago White Sox. I love what we've seen out of him. He's a perfect 4-0 in his 5 starts at home on the season, and he's been able to get those strikeouts. I really do think here, even though the Baltimore Orioles offensively can be so dangerous, that he can come out strong enough to limit those bats, and you have every opportunity of cashing a big ticket here on the Chicago White Sox. So I'm going to hit that money line for them in this one. I'm also going to look at Eric Friede here coming out for his strikeouts. Over 4.5 strikeouts is minus 130, but I think you can even fire that up on that ult number. 6+ strikeouts here, Kevin, coming in at plus 164. I do think he has that strong of a day that I'm not even concerned taking it up.
All right, so let's take a look then, Joe, at this Braves-Pirates game, which yesterday was a weird one. And Pittsburgh won 11-5. I think they were up 10 or 11-0 in the game. They're a home dog here with Mitch Keller going. What do you see with Pittsburgh and Atlanta?
Yeah, this is a total pitching duel for me between these two pitchers. Lopez getting the start here for the Atlanta Braves. He's been nice and strong. He hasn't been allowing a lot of runs. And then Mitch Keller, same sort of situation. He's got a strong ERA at 3.84. I do think both of them can come out strong enough. And then we have bullpens that I trust to keep this one to the under. So I'm taking the under 8.5. I know it's hard in a Braves game, and especially after what we saw yesterday with all of those runs rolling in. But I'm not seeing the runs come today between these two pitchers. You look at Lopez, he's only given up 2 runs in his last 2 starts. His ERA is a 1.54. He's been phenomenally strong. So I do think the Braves will get some runs on Mitch Keller, but this one to go over the 8.5, Kevin, I just don't see happening.
All right, and then, Joe, just to make sure we can try and get the rest of this juice in here, we've got, because I want to make sure we get the Nerfy for the people. It's out west. What are you looking for?
Yeah, you got to look at the Nerfy here between the New York Yankees and the San Diego Padres. Stroman getting the start here for the Yankees, and Dylan Cease for the Padres. Now, he got lit up in his last game out versus the Braves on Monday. He allowed all of these runs to come in. He needs a phenomenal bounce back. And Stroman coming off that great performance versus the Seattle Mariners. I do think both of these pitchers come out so solid in the first. So that Nerfy coming in at minus 138. This is going to be a great start to this game. But I do lean on the Yankees to be able to get the win. I just trust their bullpen more, even though they're here on the road. So give me the Yankees and give me the Nerfy in that one, Kevin.
All right, little Yanks juice there. Joe, I like this one. A dog in Cincinnati here against the Dodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. They were able to get the win yesterday. Highly explosive offensive day out of both of these teams. And Hunter Green getting the start. I actually have faith in Hunter Green. He was able to get 8 strikeouts the last time versus the Dodgers. This is a pitching matchup we just saw last week in LA. And I do think Hunter Green has an edge over Walker Buehler here. Walker Buehler in the past he was solid the last game, but has been lit up prior versus the Reds. So I'm looking at the Reds. Give me that plus money on them. And also look at Hunter Green over on his strikeouts, Kevin.
All right, and then I know, Joe, you're going to get the over potentially there in the Royals-Rays game at an 8. Loaded card, Joe. We appreciate it. As always, best of luck with all the action. Up next, we'll talk to Dave Sharapan here on SportsGrid's Game Time Decisions.